So really excited to have you on with us, Sam. I know you have an amazing story. How's your day going so far?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great as well, and I appreciate you asking that. And before we jump into anything, I do just want to kind of quickly, not speak for you, Sam, because I really haven't had the opportunity to truly, meet you and talk to you, hands-on for a long time. But you have a story coming into this business, and I think that that's really important. I did as well, and one thing I know is that I don't necessarily use that as a selling point, but I use it as a point of being able to relate with that client. So, guys, really just lean into this call. It's in, as I mentioned, we sit back each and every week and intentionally think who could be on this call and, help support the team. So again, Sam, without further ado, thanks for being on with me today. And I know I can ramble for days. So to get kind of started, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you were doing kind of, before Family First Life, and what kind of got you involved with Family First Life.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you, Marisa, for having me on and inviting me on the call. I don't take it lightly, so it's an honor to have me speak in front of everybody and allow me to kind of share about why I'm in this business. Um, I kind of so I got my associate's degree when I was like 19, and I finished my schooling at a community college. And a buddy of mine actually introduced me to the business about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And he used to sell in Victorville here with Paul and Andrew back in like 2016. And he isn't in the business anymore. He wasn't in the business anymore when he was telling me about it. Um, and he told me about it, and he knew I was kind of looking for something, and I told him no. Um, I had lost I lost my dad when I was 19. He passed away from lung cancer, and um, he worked really hard his whole life. He worked in the printing industry. He was like a mechanic, so he worked on printing presses and machines and stuff like that. And he used to have a really good job, making over like 100 grand a year. And around 2000, computers and printers became more available at home and stuff, and so that industry kind of just crashed. And so he went from making like 100 grand to like 30 grand a year. So growing up, I remember losing our house, moving into a mobile home, all these things. And my dad had a lot of financial stress, and one of the ways he used to relieve stress was to smoke. So he unfortunately got cancer, passed away. And I saw how hard my dad worked for so little, like I have in my will was to say, hey, I never want something like that to ever happen again in my family. Just financial stress. And so that's kind of what got me started to look for industries and opportunities to be able to uh, create, not like I never wanted to be rich, but I always said, dude, I just want financial freedom. And
Mhm.
so after I told my friend no, I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read The Slight Edge. I read Think and Grow Rich. And all those three books all talk about getting into commission based sales and using commissions to invest in assets to create passive income. So I called my friend back and I was like, dude, hey, is that insurance agency still hiring? And he was like, I don't know. Let me check. And he connected me with Trey Honeycutt and Elaine Flinchbaugh, who were local here. And I'm super grateful that he did. They're wonderful leaders. They're everything I could have asked for in business partners. Um, and that's kind of how I got started and introduced to FFL.
Awesome. And Sam, there was so much to that, that we could kind of pick apart. But, like a lot of the things that stood out to me were, first and foremost, I'm sorry that you lost your dad at 19. I can imagine that that was really tough. But you also pointed out you saw how hard your dad worked, right? Like you saw, the manpower and the hours that he was putting in, and he was putting those in for you and for the family, right? Like you weren't confused about that, right? You also mentioned, the printing press industry kind of, wasn't as needed, right? So he needed to switch jobs, financial stress, financial pressure, and, sometimes sicknesses can come, with that, right? And it's really unfortunate. But you were able to kind of take that negative, if you will, and not make it a positive, but turn it into the best scenario that it could be, right? You talked about, you picked up, I love how you talked about your buddy introduced you to the industry and you were like, I'm all set. And then you read these 3 books and you were like, hey, so what's up with that insurance thing, right? Because, something in your mind clicked and said, like, hey, I just want that financial freedom, right? And I feel like that can be defined differently for everybody. But, you went through different adversities, in your life, everything wasn't, perfect and clean, so to say, right? I don't think anybody's life is. But at the end of the day, everybody comes from a different background. So I love how you reached back out to your friend and you said, hey, like, after reading these books, like I want to be in commission sales, right? So that's a pretty cool story. And now with that being said, Sam, what would you say coming in was like your biggest challenge, like at the start?
Well, so I mean, dialing was a huge challenge just because it made me so nervous. Like I remember I'd have to wear like tank tops or like sleeveless shirts or something because like I would go in the office and then I'd wear like a white shirt or I'd wear something and then like I'd dial for a couple hours and I would come out and there'd just be like sweat stains because I got so nervous. It's kind of gross. I'm sorry, Marisa, but
It's not gross. I'm like, I've been there, I understand.
and I still get it sometimes. Like sometimes I just still get a little bit nervous, and then after like 25 phone calls in, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like I'm chilling. Um, no, dialing was one of the harder parts, just because I didn't know what to expect calling leads. I had no idea. Like, they gave me a batch of leads, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna call these people up. Like I saw like I think it was like these were probably like 1 year old final expense mailers and I had like no script. Like I just started calling them, and I was like, man, this Miss Mary wants insurance, and she's like 85 years old. Look how sweet her little old lady handwriting is. And I called Miss Mary, and I think she said some expletives and hung up on me. And it my first dial day, I think I cried for like 30 minutes, and then.
Thank you for admitting that, thank you.
It's true. But
Because you're going into that learning curve though, but you were able to fight that curve, right?
yeah, yes. Yeah,
And you
so the
jumped
learning
right in.
curve
You
was
had
the
you had no
hardest.
script. You had no script. You had leads. You knew they were probably old. You didn't really know what to expect, but you just got on the phone and dialed, right?
Yes.
And I love how you say like after even now, after like 25 dials, you're like, okay, now I'm dialing, right? And that's the power of momentum, right? It's like even till this day, being in the industry for like 8 years, there's times I come in and I'm like, okay, like same thing, like I don't know why, but these leads look different today, right? Whatever it might be, and you can kind of psych yourself out. And at the end of the day, though, if you keep that momentum and you keep your dial, like your activity high, you're not zoning in every 30 minutes and zoning back out. You're zoning in your first 25 dials and you're staying in the zone, right? And that's a powerful
Dude,
place
yeah.
for sure. So, Sam, after watching you and seeing you on a couple of different calls, whether that was with Paul, with Trey, it seems like you're always willing to try different lead types. And I respect that because not everybody always is. With that being said, what does your lead flow typically look like? What leads are you predominantly purchasing? And how much are you spending per week, give or take? Talk to us about your lead
Yeah. So if I look back at the last 90 days of my issue paid report, my average is always going to end up being like a 3 to 4 times return on whatever my lead cost, my lead investment was for the month. So now my average, I'm trying to average at least $1,500 to $2,000 a week into leads.
And I love how you talked about that return, right? Right? You said you're typically yielding a return of 3 to 4 times, right? And sometimes I know, for example, like when I came into the industry, like on my, first actual lead order, I probably like just made my money back because, I wasn't that good, right? But after that, being able to see that multiplying factor is huge, right? Because we can spend $50,000 a month on leads, but if we're not dialing them and helping families, it really doesn't matter, right? So I love how you talk about the return that you're seeing on the leads because that's important too. So you track your ROI. You're very like tuned
Yeah.
into that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what leads are you predominantly purchasing right now?
So honestly, like 95% of my lead flow is all CRM leads. It's all just, it's going to be internet, ethos abandoned cart leads, whatever internet's available in the counties. I'm an in-home guy, me personally. So I prefer to go, like I did telesales for like 6 months and it burnt me out. So I went back in the field. Um, and it works for me. It keeps things simple. Um, so I just prefer to work whatever is available in my county on the CRM. I don't worry. I try not to worry specifically too much about the lead type. I do work all leads. You need a good mixture of everything. Um, but I try to, I have put it more back onto what does my timeline look like of the total month of how much I invested, and what was my return.
Okay, I love that. And when you look at it like that, you take the emotions out of it, right? You're able to
Yeah,
say, these are the numbers, these are these numbers, and this is the difference, right? So it's a lot less emotional that way. Is that fair?
dude. Yeah, dude, and like on a Wednesday, like when I'm in the middle of it and I'm getting my butt kicked and it feels like I got my butt kicked all week, and I'm like, this business sucks. I want to quit. I want to drive home. I want to drive off of a cliff. Um, like you feel that way in the moment, but then like Thursday morning when I look up the issue paid report and I track, okay, how many appointments did I sit? How many did I set? How many did I sell? I'm like, oh wow, I was actually being way too hard on myself. I'm actually doing really, really well this month. So it's crazy.
I love that because like I'm like what you just said, I'm like I've been there. I'm like if you've been in homes, like you've definitely been what Sam just said, you've thought it before, right? And the thing is what it seems like you're doing too, Sam, is you're extremely numerical, which in my opinion in this business, you don't have to like overdo it, but like you said, you have to know I set 30 appointments, I sat with 15, right? I helped 10, five no showed me, and 10, whatever you need to know what happened, right? And when you can block that out at the bottom of your day, like for me at the bottom of my Tuesday, it will say 8 appointments, sat five, helped three. That way I know my ratio, but it's not this crazy ratio. If you do it every single day, it's just a compound effect and you're used to doing it. And like you said, Sam, on Wednesday night, when you're, kind of, you might be beating yourself up or saying, hey, I could have had a better week or coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? I've been there too, by the way. It's like you're able to actually look at the numbers and say, okay, actually, you're doing a lot better than you thought you were. Maybe it wasn't just your best Wednesday, right? Versus
Yeah,
looking at it, from a week stance. So I love that. And I think that it shows that you're not being emotional about it. You're being logical about everything because you keep going back to numbers. And I like that. So you're working predominantly ILC leads, you're in home, and you're getting that 3-4 times return on your leads, which is great. With that being said, we all have to have expectations for ourselves to be able to perform at any sort of high level in this business, right? With that being said, what are some of the expectations that you set for yourself? Whether that's, plugging into team calls, dial teams, your schedule, activity, anything of that sort.
yeah. So one thing that oh shoot, sorry. One thing I implemented like in the last 5 months or so, and I didn't do this for like the first year and a half in business, was I have this big black like calendar, and in it has like I do daily planning, so and I do monthly planning. So one of the things that I changed was now I plan each day before the day begins. So tonight I'm going to write out an hourly schedule of what Friday is going to look like for me, which will include running appointments, talking to agents, door knocking, anything like that. And I plan that hourly from like 7 a.m. to like 9 o'clock at night, just so I can have a clear itinerary and schedule of what I'm going to do for the day. Um, One thing that, like, a mistake that I always kept making, and I didn't realize it was a mistake, um, is when you don't plan the day before the day begins, you will tend to renegotiate what you're going to do based on how you feel in the moment. And you don't realize you're doing that, but that's what most people do.
And Sam, when you realized that that's what was happening, right? Like you realized, hey, I'm waking up on Friday and maybe, you don't have an appointment till 11 and you're like, well, I was going to go to the gym, but I'm just going to hang out because I don't really feel like going to the gym. I'm running late, right? We make up 21 excuses. How much has that helped you when you changed that, when you took, maybe 15, 20 minutes the night before to actually pack your day out and know what it's going to look like? So like you said, you're going in with that clear itinerary and you're not going in, blind essentially.
Well, for one, it builds up confidence in yourself, and it saves you energy because it takes mental energy to think about what you're going to do next. And mental energy is a huge resource that we need to conserve in this business because we spend it so much with different people. And one thing is it helps build momentum as well. And momentum in this business is everything because I've realized it'll make you look 5 times better than you are. And it makes everything look 5 times worse than what it actually is without it.
Absolutely. And what you just said is everything. I always say if you don't have a schedule, like you truly don't have a schedule, like you don't like you can have one thing, it's a schedule, right? So I love how you really just hit on that you said it builds confidence. And it helps like, your energy, right? Mental energy is huge. Like you said, we're talking to people all day long, whether that's clients, as agents, and we're problem solving, right? So it is a lot of mental energy. So not having to do that in the morning or not trying to figure it out in the morning is huge. You might go home tonight and say, well, I'm really tired. I'll figure it out in the morning. Well, in the morning, it's not going to make it any better, right? Because just like you're saying, Sam, the momentum in this business, it truly does. It makes you look 5 times better or it makes you look 5 times worse. There's no medium there. And the great thing or the worst thing about momentum is once you build it, you're building it. But once you drop that momentum, it's harder to get back up. Can you get back up? Absolutely, but that's up to you. So, guys, if there's one thing right now that we could all take in, it would be let's actually schedule our days the day before if we're not already doing that. And even monthly, you said you probably have like a good outline of things that are important. You're scheduling your month, your dial days, your run days. Maybe you have, family encounters or whatever it may be, but you know where you're going to be that month physically. So I love that. And then, so you are face to face in home. And when you're in home, or even if you can think back to like, so telesales, actually, if you don't mind, Sam, really quickly, I wanted to hit on this before I go into my next question. You mentioned telesales and that you tried it out for 6 months. And I respect you for being able to get on this call and say, hey, I tried it for 6 months. It wasn't really my cup of tea, so to say. So I went back in the field. Because I don't think that everybody's actually able to say that. What were some of the things that during that time that you were doing telesales, if you can really remember, that you found most frustrating versus being in home?
Just getting in front of people. Honestly, that was the most frustrating part because because the whole time, the other thing is like, I don't think maybe I was necessarily doing it right because I've had experiences where I do it, like I do telesales with a group or lock-ins or anything like that. And I think those are great. And I think that's how it should be done just because it's about team camaraderie then. And you're all dialing the phone, doing one call closes, and there's a lot of energy in that room. Um, but when you're doing it, when you're just locking yourself in like a closet or you're in your home office or it's really easy to just like have a bad 4 hours of dialing. You get 10 pickups, 5 people told you to go piss off, and then it's really easy to say, you know what, I'm gonna go make a sandwich. So like that's one thing, and then my profitability was a lot lower. That 3 to 4 times return wasn't there. It was maybe like a 1 to 2 times return, which for me, it didn't really necessarily work out. Um, for me, what I've learned is that telesales is a great supplement to my business. So if I can't make it to the appointment, or if I need to reschedule, but I'm not in that area, or like what have you, it's a great supplement because I could do some one call closes, I could do some phone appointments, I could do some Zoom appointments if the client prefers that. But I don't think it's a good substitute for me personally.
Right. And I like how you said that, right? Like if you're in a room, team camaraderie, you have everybody around you doing it as well, and you're able to kind of hear different things, bounce up different ideas off each other, and kind of keep the energy high, right? Because it's really easy to be, like you said, sitting in a room or in your office, by yourself, and you're just kind of like, okay, well, four people told me to fly a kite, and like I don't really want to do this anymore. I'd rather be door knocking, right? So you're like, hey, I just wanted to get in front of people. So I respect that. And thank you for being just like honest about, like, because to me, I think everybody has their own approach, right? Like you said, it's not like you're incapable of a telesale, right? You're extremely capable, but you're not sitting there offering that kind of appointment. You're offering your strongest appointment, which is in home. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. And that's huge, but you're supplementing too. So, and that's what I do too, Sam, right? It's like if somebody wants Zoom, they don't want anybody in their house, they're adamant about it. I'll do a Zoom, sure. But for me, telesales, it's not going to be 100% of my business. So I love that. And now in terms of like, when you sit with a potential client, how do you feel that you develop, more trust with your client in that appointment to make sure that, they understand who you are, they feel comfortable working with you, and they feel that you're credible?
Well, that's the other thing about running in-person appointments is that it's so much easier. Like it's so much less like legwork to establish credibility in my experience. So for me, it's all about posture. And one of the things of how you can develop posture in a client or in a home with a client uh, is how you communicate. And I've noticed I always communicate more confidently and I have a stronger posture if I run 25 or 30 appointments a week because I have plenty of people and opportunities to go write a policy. I've noticed that if I only run 10 to 15 appointments a week, my posture is belittled and my confidence is very low. And I get those sweat attacks. So one of the best things I could tell a new agent is if you want to build trust in a home, run 30 appointments a week. Because if you have a lot of people to go see, you're going to be very confident and you're going to be very like your schedule is going to have you rooted and grounded that you have a lot of appointments to go see. So you're going to be it's going to reflect in how you communicate with the client.
Absolutely. And that goes back to, and you hit this right on the head, Sam, that goes back to just nonverbal communication, right? If I say to you, I'm like, hey, Sam, would you mind if you just could grab a voided check? Right? Like now it's like, wait, that's weird, right? Like versus like,
Yeah.
hey, Sam, just grab that voided check, right? Just super confidently in myself too, right? So I love what you're saying. You said if you're a new agent or you're not seeing the success you want to see, run 30 appointments a week. It's like when you run 30 appointments a week, you're going to run into helping somebody by accident, right? Like that's just how it works, right? So the posture in the home, that's huge. You're a lot more confident when you have 30 appointments in a week versus when you're like, okay, I have these 8 and hopefully I can help all 8 of them, right? And then you're in there and you're like, right? Like, like you said, like you're sweating, I'm like, the house is on fire, you know what I mean? So that's my feeling in there. So posture is everything. If you can hold yourself confidently and you're in there saying, hey, I work with you guys and about 15 others in the area right now. My job is just to get the information to you. And you're able to say that confidently, they're listening. They feel like, you were assigned to them as you were, you got that lead, you got in front of that family. So it's like holding yourself to a standard of, I know what I'm doing and I'm confident is huge in this business. Body language is huge in this business. Sam, my first month in this industry, I couldn't sell a policy. And I was not with Family First Life. I was with the practice company. We didn't have leads. However, every home I would go into, I would be like, okay, and Sam, how old are you? Like, I wouldn't make eye contact with you. I wouldn't match or mirror you. I wouldn't try to understand where you were coming from. And then I was like, why do all these people seem to hate me? And it's like, well, because you're going in there being sketchy and not being relatable at all, right? So being able to learn, hey, you have to know how to communicate to an extent of confidence and just know you're going in there to help the family. It's like you're not going in there to do anything weird. You're going in there to help the family, right? So that was awesome. I appreciate that, Sam. That's huge. And like you said, building trust, face to face, it can tend to be quite a bit easier just because you're going there, et cetera, et cetera. But how do you set the expectation when you're in the home with that client that you're going to be doing business today?
I mean, that's like the first thing that I do with the client. One is I'll establish credibility. Marisa, I'll show you my license. Here's my ID. Here's my credibility sheet with all the carriers on here. They're all good A-rated companies. I work with all of them. But my job, Marisa, I'm a field underwriter. So I'm just going to ask you a few minutes of some health questions and then a few minutes of some basic insurance questions. That kind of just gives me a good idea which companies may approve you and which ones may, deny you for any insurance coverage. Out of the ones, what I'll do is I'll kind of help you customize a plan to fit your needs and most importantly, fit your budget. Once we find something that makes sense, Marisa, we're going to submit a request for coverage to one of the insurance carriers. They'll check your medical, they'll check your social for your prescriptions. And the last thing they would need is a voided check or account and routing number. That's how you'd be funding the policy if you were to get approved. Does that make sense?
Yes. Perfect.
Cool.
So that's how you're getting it right in the beginning. It's like if you just told me that right now, I'm like, okay, Sam, we're doing business. Like I'm with you. So I love that. And you're getting every rebuttal, so to say, off the table at the beginning. So very proactive versus reactive in the home, right? If at the end you're like, well, John and Mary, like, well, we could go ahead. Like, it's like now you just turn into the sales guy. But when you're saying, hey, we're going to submit a request for coverage, you're explaining the steps to them. We're going to need your social for the prescriptions. We're going to need a voided check because that's how you're going to be funding this policy. You're putting everything on the table. And again, you're doing it with confidence. So they're not confused. They're like, okay, this is how we do it. Because guys, that is how we do it, right? So awesome, Sam. I love that. And another question for you, so when you're writing business, whether it's at a high level or not at a high level, writing business in general, right? We're going to have one thing's to write business, one thing's to have business, stay on the books, right? Which is huge in this industry. So what are some of the things that you do, in home to solidify that sale, to make sure that, the client is indeed, happy with the coverage, can feels good about, the budget, so to say, and feels good about the policy?
So I think I do a couple of things that work pretty well. When I show options, I'll take whatever their net monthly income is. So if they're keeping $2,000 a month after they pay most of their expenses or that's their take home. For my options, I usually show the max would be 7% of their monthly income. I don't try to show them more than that unless they ask, but then I'll kind of challenge them too. When I have them pick options, I always try to talk them down to make sure it's something that they can afford consistently. So if they pick an option and they say, oh, the most expensive option for $250 a month sounds great to me, I'm like, okay, Bob, but honestly, because the most important thing when it comes to insurance is that it's sustainable and it's more valuable the longer you keep it. So is $250 a month like consistent for you even on a bad month? And if he's kind of like shaky about it and he's like, no, then I'm not going to do the application for that. I'm going to tell him, hey, Bob, why don't we do option 2 or option 3? And then later on, you can always increase it if things, you say, you know what, I want to increase my coverage. We can always do that. It's really easy. It's just a phone call. Does that sound fair? So I'll do that. And then sometimes going above and beyond as an agent, like just doing small things make the client feel like you went above and beyond for them. So sending thank you cards or calling back the client and offering a policy review, saying, hey, Bob, I just want to check in. Have you gotten your policy yet? I have any questions? Answering your client's phone calls. I'll send thank you notes for any sale that's, or well, I send thank you notes for every sale, but I'll send a gift card for any sale that's like 2 grand or more.
Love it. So really what you're doing is you're making sure that you're not over pitching the client, right? You're going off of their income and you're saying like, let's be logical here of what actually makes sense. So you're looking at 7% max. And I think that's huge. And you talked about you typically try to get the client to be on board with a lower option, right? Because you know that the option for 250, that's great, but maybe the 150 option actually fits their budget. So being able to talk them down to that close is huge. Because guys, what I say in every home, I'll be like, now John, Mary, if the tires, if you walked outside tomorrow, both of your car tires were slashed, can we still afford this? And that's exactly what Sam just said, except just in other words. So pick your terminology, and you want to make sure, like Sam said, if they have any hesitation at all, that you're talking them down. Because like he said, the good news is we can always increase, right? So make sure you're getting your clients in a plan that they actually feel good about, can actually qualify for, and can afford even on the worst month, right? So that's awesome. And then I love how you talked about cards. I actually haven't heard this in a while. So I send out congratulations cards, like congratulations on being approved. But the thank you card, same ideal though, right? It's like you're giving your client another touch, just like calling to make sure, they got the policy. Do you guys have any questions? You're showing them that you're there, you're their agent, right? So the probability of somebody going in behind you, Sam, is slim. Is that fair to say? Because your clients like and
Yeah,
trust you.
yeah, because everybody just wants someone that they know will pick up the phone when the beneficiary needs help. Like that's all they want.
Amen. Absolutely. And that's huge too. And guys, just like Sam said, pick the phone up when your clients call. That might sound funny, but it's like, it's not funny because sometimes we panic and we're like, oh my God, I wrote Robert yesterday and now Robert's calling. He must be calling to cancel. 9 out of 10 times, Robert's not calling to cancel. He might be calling because he wants to change his contingent. He might be calling because he has a quick question. Answer the phone and show your client that you're going to show up for them. So that was huge, Sam. I appreciate you. And last thing before you hop off here, I don't want to take too much of your time. What are your goals to wrap up 2023, whether that's business, personal, both?
Yeah, so far my best year issue paid has been 200,000 or 200 families helped. So my goal this year would be to hit Hall of Fame and help 400 families. And I think a majority of being able to hit that is just going to be consistent with my lead flow and consistent with my schedule. And then I would love to be able to grow our agency to be able to help 150 to 200 families consistently every month.
Awesome. I love that. And Sam, there's no doubt you're going to hit Hall of Fame. Even just being on this call with you today, the emotional intelligence is just so high. No doubt you're going to crush it. And also just building an army and a team behind you that's working with you and that loves working with you. So looking forward to seeing not only you hit Hall of Fame, but also your group helping that 150 to 200 families a month. You're going to be there before you know it. Thank you so much for being on with us today. It means the world. We appreciate you and look forward to having you again, hopefully soon.
Thank you, Marisa. It was awesome. Thanks for having me on.